You can call or text 949-542-6241 before we get out of here for some listener questions. I saw some in the YouTube chat. This was a good one, I thought, John, and unfortunately, I didn't really get to go back and watch this, but hopefully you did. This is from Nick Marks in the chat. What happened on the AJ Green play that was called incomplete?
Yeah, so on the broadcast, it didn't show replay, so I had to go back and look at it from the coach's film. And from what I saw, is that Green caught it, got 1 foot in, and then the ball kind of drops down to his left knee, and it looks like he's kind of bobbling it, trying to regain possession. And at that same time, another foot came down. And at this point, that foot came up, looked like Green resecured it, got another foot down, and then went out of bounds. So what I'm assuming is the ref saw the ball bobble, and then when he repossessed it, he only had 1 foot incomplete. So I think that's kind of what happened, even if I would have liked a further explanation of it.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't really get to see it. I stepped out for 1 second and didn't get to see the play. Ended up kind of being a big play in the scheme of things because it caused a 3rd and 17. Then the next play, I think Dalton threw that interception towards Ross, and it kind of started to snowball a bit out of control from there. But I think it's a microcosm of the officiating this year, that there's been a lot of questionable calls, both on the Bengals, against other teams, and I think that's a theme for this year. We do have a call on the line. We have a call on the line from our good friend John from Kentucky. John, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, and great podcast tonight. I always like hearing you guys. I'll just get right to it. The game, honestly, I just thought the Bengals last Sunday against the Panthers, I just thought they got manhandled on both sides of the ball, really. But they kept playing hard, and they did stay in the game most of the time. But, all the first downs we gave up on defense, and I still thought Andy Dalton got pressured a lot. The Panthers just looked like the stronger team last Sunday. But I know this is the NFL, and, of course, if Cincinnati was to play, say, the Panthers this Sunday at Paul Brown, it could be totally different. So I do think we're in pretty good shape. Now, I have been dishing on Dre pretty bad tonight in the chat with some people, but Drake Kirkpatrick, I don't know, I'm pretty concerned this weekend against Atlanta because it seems to me like he struggles against, Super Bowl quarterbacks. Quarterbacks that have been in the Super Bowl, Matt Ryan's one of them. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I'll get to your thoughts in just a second, John Sheeran. But the thing is that here's the thing with Dre. This year he's given up big penalties. He's given up critical first down plays. He did it last week. Critical first down plays on 3rd downs. He's not giving up the gigantic touchdown passes. He's not giving up, large gains for the most part. It's just kind of been a really frustrating year for Dre. And I think, and John, I remember from years past, you and I both have been critical of Dre Kirkpatrick from different programs. I remember, yes, yeah. So, I think that one of the things that has really hurt Dre this year and would have put him in bigger, I guess more so in fan graces, is the fact that he's dropped at least 1 interception opportunity every game this year. And this is a team, I think we know now that this is a defense that'll give up yards. It'll give up some points, but they will feast, kind of like what they did in 2005. They will feast off of the turnovers, and they will create the short fields for Dalton. That's kind of the plan, and it worked well the first couple of weeks. And when they didn't do it this week, and then Dalton turned the ball over more, it really bit them in the butt. And I think Dre has got to learn and got to figure out how to hang on to some of these interceptions. I'm sure that's stuck in your craw, right, John?
Yeah, and what Catterell.
Yeah, I couldn't even remember the last interception he got, but then somebody was Michael Myers. He mentioned he did get a couple. Actually, it was in a primetime game against Denver.
Yep.
It's been 3 or 4 years ago. Other than that, though, I can hardly remember any, so I expect a lot more from him. But I will say this, Dre Kirkpatrick, for the past few years, can make a tackle and get up. Remember when he first came to Cincinnati? Oh, man, he'd make a tackle, and he looked like he'd been hit by a car. He'd lay there.
Yeah.
And they'd have to help him off the field, then he wouldn't play for 6 games. Then he'd come out, he'd play again, make one tackle, down he goes. He can't get up. And I thought, man, they drafted this guy in the first round. This is unreal. Yeah. So he is past that point, but like you said, would really appreciate it if he could get some turnovers. It would greatly help us out when we need it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, John. We're going to take the rest of this question off the air and try and get some other callers in. Appreciate the call and appreciate the support, sir.
All right, guys.
All right, who day, buddy? John, yeah, well, there was 2 Johns there, so that got a little confusing. So, but I do want to get your thoughts on Dre, because obviously now, I mean, it's these are footballs that are hitting him right in the chest, right in the hands. I mean, these are gimmies, and Cam Newton gave him a gimme last week. He didn't do it. Now, again, who knows if what that would have done, but it was a little bit of a microcosm as to the Bengals afternoon against the Panthers, because they missed that block punt, as we mentioned earlier. They missed that fumble recovery. They missed that interception. Your thoughts on Dre? I mean, like I said, he's not giving up the long ball touchdowns. He's not giving up, 50-yard plays routinely, but he's giving up 15, 20 yards on 3rd and 11. He's giving up he's letting things happen and move the sticks, and he's not making the interceptions to kind of atone for those things.
Yeah, and because he's not getting burned deep, that's why there's nothing really Jesse Bates or Sean Williams can really do for him over the top. Like, people have asked me, like, can they shade a safety over towards Dre's side to give him help? How is the safety going to help if they just keep burning him underneath? And because the dude on 3rd and long doesn't play to the sticks, he plays like 4 yards past the sticks, and it allows just an first down completion. Like, that happened multiple times against Carolina. He tackled, I think it was Torrey Smith, like 2 yards past the first down, and then like held his fist up like it was 4th down, and he's like, "Oh wait, crap! It was but like that's just Dre things at this point. Like at this point, I don't care if he doesn't catch interceptions. I just coverage, because he can't even do that. Like, he gives up so much separation when guys are coming out of the breaks, and he has to like turn his head around completely, and like doesn't even flip his hips. He turns his whole body around. It's like the exact opposite teaching tape of a cornerback coming into the NFL, and those are issues that were with him in Alabama, and they just never really got better because it's just hard for players to change. So it's just hard to really hide a cornerback, specifically a cornerback that doesn't get burned deep, but just can't stay with his guy, in the short and intermediate routes. And it's hard for a defense to try to help him out in that sense, because there's just not a lot that they can do. An offense will take advantage of a certain weakness on the defense.
Yeah, and it's very. There was kind of some talk about like, oh, Dre was seen walking around Paul Brown Stadium this week with a football cradled in his arms, and he worked extra long after practice to, catch the football, and he was playing catch with Andy Dalton after practice. I think were some of the reports, and it still isn't. I don't know. It's almost as if there's been a bit of a regression, and I say that because even when he was a reserve defensive back, when Terrence Newman was here, Leon Hall was here, and he kind of was like in and out of the lineup. When he was there, he was kind of the gamble big play guy. He was either like kind of letting up a play, or he would have that big interception or a pick six or something like that. And it just hasn't happened the last couple of years. And, now he's got kind of a big contract, and I think some people are getting a little impatient with him, but we'll see here. This is a question from Peter Neefus in the chat room, and then we'll get our score predictions or our predictions and some final thoughts on the Falcons game before we get out of here. Peter Neefus in the YouTube chat says, is it time to rotate in? Is it time to rotate in Jefferson? And I think he means Malik Jefferson, based on what we've seen from the linebackers. You've seen them struggle in coverage against running backs and tight ends. You've seen the backup linebackers, Hardy Nickerson and others, not play so well against the run, or at least this past week. So Is this still another thing in terms of with Jefferson? Is this still a thing where Marvin is being very staunch with those rookies and, they got to bide their time? Or is this kind of a time to say, Marv, you've made some changes in terms of this team and who you are this year. Maybe it's not the time to be so prideful and let a guy like Jefferson get in there, because quite honestly, I don't know what there is to lose, especially when you're still missing potentially Preston Brown and Vontaze Burfict.
Yeah, so Jefferson, I think the whole thing with the Bengals linebackers essentially is that they're you notice the difference so much with them because traditionally the Bengals defensive line doesn't make a lot of impact plays on the run. They're really gap oriented, but they don't shed a lot of blocks up there. And it's really up to Burfict for a lot of those times to make plays on second level blockers and track down running backs, whatever, on outside runs. And as we've seen without him, whenever he's not out there, guys like Visual and Jordan Evans and in this case Hardy Nickerson, they can't really pick up the slack. And that's why these long runs kind of happen. With Jefferson, it was pretty obvious in the preseason that he was clearly not ready in terms of handling his gaps and just being a disciplined player at the position. And that was really expected because he came in at 21 years old. He had really 1.5 good years at Texas where they just kind of let him free. And that's why I think the potential is there for him having the same qualities, if not at the same level as a Burfict guy who's a pursuit guy who can go from scrape over the back of formations and make those impact plays. I just don't think that in a week's time we're going to be able to see that from him in his first game playing on the defense. I think that they just got to bite the bullet and just have who they have out there now in terms of Nickerson and Vigil and Evans and just kind of hope for the best. And because obviously Falcons running game, I don't think is as diverse with especially Steve Sarkisian calling the plays. They won't be as diverse and as versatile as we saw the Panthers run game. I think that will, I guess, help out the linebackers see things a little. Guys do have to win one-on-one assignments. They do have to get off blocks. They do have to make impact plays. I would still even have more confidence in Evans and Vigil doing that over Jefferson at this point.
Yeah, and oh boy, SC fans and Sarkisian, let's not even go there. Yeah. I mean, that's like Lane Kiffin and SC. Here's my thing with Malik Jefferson. I think yes, he has immense growing to do. Yes, I think his upside is very big. I've always kind of been a little bit of the mindset though of if you have confidence in, and I mainly say this in terms of the back seven of a defense, the linebackers and secondary players. And I guess I'm more specifically saying the linebackers and the safeties. So my thing is if you are flanked with a bunch of veterans, guys that are doing their job, guys that have high football IQ and can diagnose plays well, you can say what you want about Vontaze Burfict in terms of his late hits and all that kind of stuff. If you hear about him, his football IQ, according to coaches and players and everything, it's through the roof. His ability to diagnose plays is through the roof. Okay, Preston Brown, probably not as high of a football IQ as Vontaze Burfict, but a disciplined football player nonetheless, not as dynamic of a football player as Vontaze Burfict, but a guy that you can kind of trust when he's in there and healthy and all of that. I'm kind of like, maybe you can kind of have the wild man in there. Maybe you can kind of have the wild card and let him run sideline to sideline. And yeah, you might get some headaches and some, oh my God, but you might get those wow plays, and I think back a little bit to what the Steelers did with Troy Polamalu and what the Ravens did with Ed Reed. And yeah, it's a different position. It's safety. But they had all those pieces kind of around them. And they knew those guys weren't real. I mean, they had high football IQ and incredible athleticism and big playability. But they kind of said, dude, do your thing. Just I mean, here's the play. Try and play within the confines of it. But, I mean, Polamalu was almost a linebacker at times. Exactly. I mean, he was a guy. Remember how many times he would time a snap and jump over the center and sack a quarterback. So my point is, and I'm not saying Malik Jefferson's an Ed Reed or a Troy Polamalu, but my point is that if you have an athletic guy and he's surrounded by guys that may be able to mask a little bit of his mistakes or his youth or that sort of thing, I don't know. I think you may want to roll the dice a little bit, especially when things. I mean, I don't want to say 1 week is, let's get knee jerk reactionist, but you drafted him in the 3rd round for a reason, and he's got athleticism and size. I don't know. Am I crazy in thinking that, or is that just hey, that's a little too mad in football for me, buddy?
No, I think the potential for him to be there is there. I think if we're talking about a 1 week solution in terms of before Burfict comes back, it might not be the best, which is the context of which I was answering. But I totally agree that Jefferson that was what stood out on tape, was when he was just let loose, able to make those Burfict like plays, granted in the Big 12 and whatnot. But yeah, the potential is there for him to become that, and I think at the very least they should give him a couple opportunities in the base, because they claim that he can play all 3 positions. Obviously, they wouldn't want him, with the mic in his helmet or whatnot. But if he comes in for, Hardy Nickerson on a drive or 2 at middle linebacker in base, I wouldn't be too opposed to it, just see what we can get for him. But my expectations, I guess, would be very low in that department, I guess.
Yeah, I'm with you there. But he is a guy that probably later this year or, next year, he should be having a prominent role. Depending on his growth, because I think the ceiling's high there. The floor may be a little low, but I think the ceiling is very high there for him. He's very athletic, and I think once he kind of gets the nuances of things, Malik Jefferson could be a good player for the Bengals. One last, just kind of quick to put a bow on the John Ross thing. We got a text from, I believe it was from Austin Tran. Do you think John Ross is going to overcome his mistakes for what he did in the Panthers game, whether they are his mistakes or not? Are you just plain confident that he is a guy that the Bengals can rely on going forward in the offense?
Yes, I am. And that's part on Ross getting his head right. It's part on Laser, making things a little bit easier for him. That's part on Dalton, maybe putting in some extra work after practice to just get him just more acclimated with everything. And if you have to go the extra mile, he's worth it, because that's just how talented he is. And it's about time that we start remembering that when he was drafted, remembering the kind of player that he was at Washington, because this guy, he's talented enough, and that, again, these mistakes, if they happen, they happen, but you just got to kind of live with it and realize what the bigger picture is.
Totally agree. And I think his ceiling is Deshaun Jackson plus. I mean, I think he is, I think he's got a lot of talent. And it hasn't been totally tapped yet by the Bengals. And I think that, I think fans are doing Ross a disservice and potentially the Bengals a disservice by saying, oh, he's a bust. But it's so far. It's just not a fair thing. There are frustrations there. There are issues there. But I think it's way too early for that. And I think you and I agree, John.